PBR Street Gang, this is Almighty, over. PBR Street Gang, this is Almighty. Standing by, over.
Hey Folklorist family, my name is Daisy and I'll be your host for this week's episode. Joining us for this stream is a group of folklorists from across the nation with a lot of feelings about, you guessed it, Taylor Swift's new album, Folklore. So this is her 8th studio album, and when it dropped at midnight on none other than Folklore Thursday, all the folklorists that I know and all the folklorists I don't know started tweeting about this. And we all listened to the album, except for me. I'm going to be listening to it for the first time here today. But we all have a lot of feelings and wanted to jump in and do some live reactions. Well, before we jumped into this call, we were talking about some past Taylor Swift songs that we all have been thinking about because of this album. I appreciated the Romeo and Juliet TikTok edit that's been going around. That's what I've been hearing a lot. Surprisingly, I haven't been hearing a lot of actual Folklore album songs. It's all like Taylor Swift reboots, which has been kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think the only one that I might have seen, at least on TikTok, was something about Cardigan.
Yeah, Cardigan debuted at number 1. So there's a huge push for that one. But yeah, there's a lot of she's got a 15-year career.
Yeah.
I would like somebody to explain to me the Tim McGraw song that she had on her first album, because I was reading her Wikipedia and it said that was her first hit.
Like a video on TikTok that's circulating of her at some sort of, I think it's the CMAs, singing Tim McGraw to Tim McGraw as he's sitting next to his wife Faith Hill.
I'm getting a lot of secondhand embarrassment thinking about
I'm just
that.
depressed.
It cringed.
Also, was she 10 at the time?
It's from 11 years ago. So her video, the Tim McGraw song, is from 11 years ago. I don't know how old she is, so
I think she's 30.
She's 30. That's what I thought. So she was 20 when she.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess
and
of age.
Cringe.
Yeah. But when you think of Tim McGraw, she hopes you think of your favorite song.
I'm
stop.
That's kind of meta, and I feel like she gets that way a little bit on Folklore, in my opinion. But
I agree.
Yeah.
To use I guess cultural references as symbols within her songs for other things.
That song was her first single, so it debuted in 2006.
That's 15 years ago.
Yeah. And she's younger than me.
I was in high school when that came out.
She was in high school.
Yeah.
Now I just who would I have written my Tim McGraw to when I was in high school?
Don't want to think about it.
Joe Strummer or Freddie Mercury, apparently.
Yeah.
Look, okay, we had a whole phase, there was a whole group of us that decided we were really into David Bowie and Queen and The Clash. And
but you see all 3 of those bands and I assume you got into the Killers, but apparently not.
Well, I was a senior in high school and somebody showed up and was like, hey, you know what we're really into? Skinny Jeans and Mr. Brightside. And I was like, cool, kids. What are you talking about? And that's how I got introduced to the Killers.
So when I was back when the beginning of Taylor Swift's career, I was not at all a Taylor Swift fan. In fact, I was actively waiting for her to fail for most of the 2010s. I just kept I don't know, just sitting there
you
trying
and me
to.
both.
Oh, I think a lot of people were. I mean,
I
was both she just kept winning, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was both at the time, holding on to the memory of the Registration trilogy, saying I was a Kanye fan, and also I was the closeted Jonas Brothers fan, Like I totally had the Jonas Brothers albums, and I was like, I would fucking defend the Jonas Brothers whenever I had the opportunity to. And of course, they have that song, "Much Better," off of their album "Lines, Vines, and Trying Times," that opens with "I got a rep for breaking hearts. Now I'm done with superstars," and teardrops on her guitars. So,
and that's a reference to Taylor, right?
That's a reference to Taylor. Yeah, that's a reference to the thing Taylor does.
Well, because that's when that's also where Taylor starts developing her own reputation. Because I think I didn't care about Taylor as a concept. Like, I didn't want her to fail, and she didn't register as an entity for me until really until Red. And that was because I was tutoring in a middle school. And so this sort of thing mattered to kids, because they tried to explain cool new bands to me, like Fall Out Boy.
Oh, that hurts.
That was a dark time. It was a dark time in my life.
Was it more than you bargained for yet?
Oh. But at the same time, like that album happened, I was kind of like, all right, cool, the kids are into this. And then when we hit like Shake It Off, and that kind of very aggressive pushing back against her reputation, that I started being like, oh, okay, what's your thing? What's your thing, Taylor? You seem to be, aware of your position in the world and how to navigate the horrors of the music industry, which is really impressive. Good for you.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really think about her too much until Shake It Off also, honestly. And it was partly because I was teaching pop culture classes, I think, around then. So I was like aware of pop culture a little bit more than I am now that I'm doing more folklore stuff. But I was kind of interested in the controversies surrounding her at that time. So yeah,
so
there's a lot.
Yeah, it was a real interesting meta engagement and direct engagement with her own with her reputation, and her own her perception and how she fits into the world.
So, like, never having heard this album Folklore before, my impression, especially based off of like her career and the things that you all are sharing, is that I'm just gonna end up going like, good for her. That's my impression going in. I don't know if I'm gonna feel the same way after we start listening to this, but
no, I mean, she's like highly accomplished. Like,
right.
We have to hand it to her.
Yeah.
One of my nieces just got into vinyl. And so like I was going through the old record collection that we still have around, of like, hey, here's some original pressings. Maybe you could be into them. And there's the complete collection of Carole King. And I just had this moment like, it feels blasphemous, but there's a lot there that I'm like, one of Taylor's albums is Tapestry. There's a very clear moment where we go from writing Locomotion and being a pop songwriter on staff to saying, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna try and and I think there's a combination of like the transition out of country pop into pure pop, and then hitting this thing of like, I'm gonna really position myself as a strong female singer-songwriter in command of my own work and in command of my own reputation. And that gets into a lot of behind the scenes, not directly music related stuff. Still feels icky and gross. Kind of want to go take a shower now, but it's not like she wrote Natural Woman yet. I don't know what her Natural Woman is, but
maybe
it
that's
exists.
yet to come.
It exists somewhere. I don't want to think about it.
I heard somewhere that she was compared to, or somebody compared her to Joni Mitchell on Twitter, and that made people I know mad. So that was my
that's like a big comparison to be making. Like,
yeah,
it's gutsy.
Yeah,
but it's like, but really, if you look at the Carole Kings, the Joni Mitchells, because part of that falls into, I think, this perception of like knee-jerk reaction of what we do with a female artist. Of like Carole King is the top songwriter of all time. Like that's a fact. that's just a fact.
It's quantifiable.
Yeah,
we're gonna Fact check it later.
like you can, or you could, that's a fact. It's a quantifiable thing. We can actually put numbers on that. And Joni Mitchell and Carly Simon and all of them all fall into this category of these are some of the greatest singer-songwriters of all time. But there is also, I think, that perception of, but ladies. And that's what Taylor falls into, I think, a lot. I think that goes very much to the initial reaction of, I'm just waiting for her to fail.
I, never having heard Madwoman, I have a lot of feelings about those two words put together, and I cannot wait to see if those feelings are upheld.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get into it.
Yeah.
So we're not going to actually listen to the entire album in its full, because there's quite a few songs, but we chose 11 of them, so it's the vast majority, and we are going to start with Cardigan. So I'm going to listen to Cardigan while y'all are chit-chatting your ideas. I'm going to live react. Dom has something to say.
Yeah, and is this where Chrissy inserts the video of Jared reacting?
Hello, my name is Jared Schmidt. Currently, I live in the fantastic state of Oregon. However, as you will shortly probably be able to tell by my monophthongal vowels, I am born and raised in the beautiful state of Minnesota. Oh yeah, sure, you betcha, don't you know? Tater tot hot dish.
The golden boy of the group, I would
just
say.
think he's adorable.
Jared is our Ryan Seacrest type. And that's why he's
good.
And that's why he's useful for us. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and play Cardigan and listen to it, and somebody take over. What were your impressions of this?
That the Cardigan says home, it says comfort, it says relaxation, and calm. And yet there's an idea of like what a breakup it sounds like tracing shadows in the grocery stores.
Carrie's got this one.
Carrie.
So my impressions of Cardigan are, for me, it's the third part of the trilogy of the knitwear metaphor songs. I'm going to discard Sweater Weather entirely because I forgot that was a song until literally 2 hours ago. This is the side effect of not listening to Top 40 radio with any consistency, is that you just forget that songs exist for a long time because it's just not there, and it's clearly not on my current playlist, which is...
Plus, who cares about, holes in your sweater?
I do, because that's actually a really important part here. So for me, the trilogy of the knitwear metaphors starts with Weezer and Undone, the sweater song, which is where we really start with holes in the sweater, only the chorus of that song being pull this thread, watch me unravel, I'll soon be naked, which is this deconstruction of a sweater. It's frogging your life away. And then part 2 is Frank Turner's Mittens, where the structuring metaphor for their relationship is we fit like mittens, but we never fit like gloves. And then part 3 is Taylor Swift's Cardigan. So with Weezer and with Taylor Swift, there's this overarching metaphor of lying on the floor, discarded knitwear, and a certain degree of comfort in there. So with Weezer, it's this dismantling of self through pulling on the thread until it unravels. With Taylor Swift, it's I'm the discarded cardigan tossed under the bed, and when you put me on, I felt like I fit. Like this kind of sense of self encompassed in a discarded garment. And all of it is this very sense of this very old thing. This is not a newly constructed sweater. This is an old, comfortable sweater that's either falling apart or being picked up after loss. And then with Frank Turner, there's this kind of what fits. What are you fitting into? How does your relationship fit? Are you and understanding that the fit on gloves and mittens is very different. The mittens are kind of all encompassing, but gloves are a much snugger, much more fitted thing.
This is so interesting because because Okay, so I'm also looking at the lyrics too, like as I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth with the music video, and the video is not at all like what I would have imagined the song was paired with, but it works, I guess.
She's in what looks like a fairy-scape, almost like she's trying to draw heavily from the idea of like an Irish folk tale, folk peasant background with the moving on to the fairy tales.
Very like fantasy kind of forest. Think like forest sprite fantasy, and then she's like playing the piano in a forest. She ends up in the water.
She's done that before. That's a visual metaphor she's played with before, and in really interesting ways.
Yeah, I mean it's top quality, obviously. The thing that I keep thinking of is when thinking about like what you were saying, Carrie, in like sweaters, and there's something about like being the discarded sweater, the sweater fitting right, like all this is really tactile. But something that I think of, especially in this idea that it's like about her in a relationship with a person, the smell of the sweater. I mean, whenever like, I don't know, I feel like people always talk about you smell good, like I want your smell, I wear your old t-shirt, I wear your old jacket because I like that smell and the embrace that's with it. And there's like nothing olfactory about this song at all to me.
I agree.
I thought was weird.
I think that the thing though that is the common thread throughout it is she's talking about like clothing, a bunch of different articles of clothing, right? She talks about high heels. She's talking about lipstick and sequins and Levi's. And to me, okay, because this song is the most Lana Del Rey song on the album and probably that she's ever done, it just sounds like she's trying to do Lana Del Rey for this song, to be honest. But I feel like that's also a very Lana Del Rey thing to be like discussing dressing up and sort of like the sort of like appearance to others, and the difference between black lipstick and a sequin smile or high heels,
right,
and the old cardigan. I feel like is something about self-presentation. That's my take.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. All of that's super valid.
And how like, okay, like high heels and maybe black lipstick and what is it, sequined lips, she says?
Sequin smile.
So like maybe to me all of the like those articles of clothing have like such they're almost like political statements in a way. Like the statements that come with them are really obvious, and I think that she's trying to draw like the cardigan into that kind of like field where wearing heels but it's in such a, because I think comparing like black lipstick, which can be taken as really empowering and maybe off-putting to some people, or like aggressive or dark or like punk rock somehow, but like elevating the cardigan to a similar, or like just another position of like you're not taking all these other articles of clothing very seriously and we wear them a lot more. I don't know, maybe I'm throwing something out there that's not there, but it's kind of interesting. I feel like she's elevating the cardigan.
Yes, I agree with that.
In a way that that other people haven't. And maybe that says something about just like being a regular Joe and feeling this way, and that's why her music's relatable or whatever. Whereas something like black lipstick's not super relatable to a lot of people.
Well, there's also there's something about how sweaters and knitwear are these permanent objects in your wardrobe. They're built to last in a way that sequins and
heels break and
heels break and are uncomfortable. Vintage t-shirts are very fragile.
Stepping on a train. Oh no, it's an actual train. Sorry.
Yeah.
Good though. I think she's doing that on purpose.
Yeah, but
smart.
Yeah, there's a permanence to knitwear. Because and this comes up a lot. Like a well-made sweater, a well-made wool sweater, and a lot of cotton sweaters as well, will last you for generations. I've got some perfectly wonderful sweaters that are 50 years old that I can't wear because I am a lot larger than my mother, but they're still good sweaters. Unless a moth gets to them, it's a permanent object.
That reminds me of like quilting in general too. I mean, like all fiber arts, but like the act of like repairing the quilt or the act of repairing the piece of clothing is like the act of repairing and preserving the memory, and the memory of the person embodied in the cardigan and that's what's happening.
Yeah, yeah, you got to keep it on a cedar hanger where a moth isn't gonna eat it, and
Yeah.
it'll go down for all. Like you can pass it down to like the next generation of your family, and someone's always gonna have this cardigan unless he keeps you under your bed in a heap, which is like just a very visceral reaction against what we should be doing with these like handmade, material culture.
And is this what she's doing with her album Folklore? Is this the future? Is this the album, the music that she is passing down to all the generations? Is that?
I think she's. Could be. I when we get to Mirrorball, I think I'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say we'll get there on Mirrorball.
Okay, cool.
There's also an element of right now. There's a very strong movement in the maker community, and especially in fiber arts, for visible mending.
Okay.
Very big thing right now, which is so you get a quilt, it's damaged, it's a beautiful vintage quilt top. You want to repair it. Instead of doing an invisible fix, you're trying to match the fabric, you're trying to match the stitches, you want it to disappear. Very strong movement now for making it obvious that you've repaired something. So, people will get, like, I have a sweater still on the needles that actually has a hole in it already. We'll get into that later. But I have a very clear choice now with that of, do I visibly mend it? I could invisibly mend it. I've got the yarn for it. I can fix that. But do I make the choice to intentionally put a patch on that will make it clear that this is an object that has been used, that's had some use, that's had some wear and tear? And that's a very interesting component when we talk about kind of metaphors for things that are falling apart, which is a lot of what goes on with these songs. Like Weezer, that sweater comes undone. There's no repair work being done on it. It's just being allowed to destroy itself. And there's an intentionality to it. And this is not in any of these songs at all, but there are two really big superstitions. Well, there's a superstition and there's a practice in knitwear communities. And one of them is the boyfriend sweater curse, which, if you haven't heard of that, the boyfriend sweater curse is if you make a sweater for your boyfriend, the relationship will fail. You cannot
spit out my drink.
So this is the thing. You're not supposed to make a sweater until after marriage. You can gift if you are a knitter and you gift things away, you can give whatever else you want to your significant other. You cannot make them a sweater because it will destroy the marriage.
I think this makes sense. It's like, don't spend all that energy on something until you know it's permanent, maybe. You don't want a permanent object that will be left with an impermanent person.
So perhaps in this song is Taylor ruining the fact that she made herself a sweater and she has been tossed under the bed.
She made herself a sweater. Explain.
She made herself into. She's a living boyfriend sweater in this song.
She is. Oh my god, she totally is though.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's the whole
true.
thing. That's like her reputation for the first 10 years of her career is that she is a living boyfriend sweater. And it's just her getting attached to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy until she aggressively starts pushing back against that relationship perception. And the other thing is this practice called knitworthiness. And knitworthiness is the idea that people are knitworthy, and that means you are deemed, you have the worthiness, you are able to receive gifts. So, and you can revoke status of knitworthiness. So, like, all of you are knitworthy.
So sweet.
Don has masks that I've made him. They're not knitted, but I made him masks.
They're very good. They cover my whole beard.
But there's this but there's also this thing of like, you're all knitworthy to a degree. Like, if any of you want hats or gloves or scarves, yeah, no problem. You can have that. You come to me for a sweater,
right?
We're gonna have a long talk.
That makes sense.
But it's also, you can revoke knitworthy status anytime. So if I gift someone a hat and they throw it in the washing machine. It felts, it shrinks, it does all of this stuff. Or I give them a shawl and it ends up getting abandoned in a bar on a night out. You're no longer knitworthy, and you have to earn that respect back. It's that it's a whole thing about the respect of, do you understand the worth of what I have made you? Mm-hmm. Do you understand the care and attention that goes into a handmade item?
Mm-hmm. Do you understand the time that you put into it? And
because we do live in a very disposable society, and we do have this really easy disposable fast fashion thing. So it comes into this thing of, do you understand that I spent 80 hours making this? Do you know that I also spent hours picking out the fiber for you and picking out the pattern and doing all this work? Do you get that? Because if you don't...
I wonder, so Taylor's fans are knitworthy in the sense that, like, her song is the cardigan, or this album is like the cardigan or the piece of clothing or fiber arts, whatever, that she's woven, right? I wonder how many hours she put into each of the songs.
Yeah.
And maybe it's different because we haven't talked about money at all, but like there's different levels of knitworthiness, I think, that you're describing, and one is just like, I would make this for you because you're my friend and I care about you, versus like buy my scarf on Etsy because I made 100 scarves.
But there's that like exchange of gift that goes on in that I think is really interesting, and kind of craft respecting craft.
Yeah.
Once again, I think so far her strongest parts of these first two songs are going to be her the melody and the instrumentation. The lyrics are, every now and then, hits you really well, but it seems like so far it relies a lot on pop culture.
One other thing that I thought would be kind of cool is to talk about like what we think Taylor Swift thinks is folklore based on each of these songs. And from this, what I've gathered is she thinks that folklore is something to be passed on,
which she literally says later. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're going with that thread for now. So like, just having listened to this song, I think Taylor Swift thinks that folklore is something to be passed on, and I also think that it has to be old, because especially considering this music video that I just watched for Cardigan, she has the really old piano. She has there's clearly like a fantastical fairy tale type element to it. Mm-hmm. The sweater is worn and then recycled or given back or shaped and used, and so
definitely
I think that
not thrown under the bed. That's
not
thrown folklore.
Exactly, it's not thrown under the bed. It's used and passed on for others to use and love. So that's what I think right now. Taylor Swift thinks folklore is this. And the reason I bring this up is, one, because the album's name is the Folklore, but also because all of the folklorists, as I mentioned earlier on Folklore Thursday Twitter, maybe we should talk about this for a second. The big controversy was that Taylor Swift doesn't know what folklore is, and that there were different camps of people who felt like they wanted to educate the public about what folklore was, others that were just excited about the fact that Taylor Swift is even using this word that people associate like with witchcraft and or songs or just folk music in general. So maybe we can get into like what Folklore Thursday is and what the big controversy online is. What's Folklore Thursday?
This is some highly specific
this is
scholarly drama. No,
it's highly specific, but also like the hashtag was Folklore Thursday.
Yeah, this is the Folklore Thursday, or this is the folklorist folklore.
This is meta folklore.
This is like super meta folklore.
Delicious.
So Folklore Thursday has been a hashtag for, I don't know, several years, probably not too much longer than that. But by a group of folklorists in the UK who use it to promote the work of like all kinds of different folklore studies. Anybody can use the hashtag as long as they in the name of proclaiming folklore. And the reason that this was controversial is because Taylor Swift surprise dropped the album midnight on a Thursday, which was Folklore Thursday. I don't know why it's not Folklore Friday. I don't know why it's not Folklore any other day of the week. Somebody probably knows, but it's Folklore Thursday and has always been. So when the hashtag Folklore Thursday was taken over by all Taylor Swift fans. And then the actual word folklore was like, what do I want to say was monetized? What's the right word for it?
It was branded.
It was branded. Thank you.
Branded as Taylor by Twitter.
Right. Yeah, and so there was a lot of feels in the community. I
really want to point this out. Trademark is a very specific legal designation.
Right. I didn't want to like overstep.
There are a lot of people who said like Taylor Swift, Twitter trademarked folklore for Taylor. You can't do that. It's a word. Like nobody trademarked the word.
Yeah.
That's a very specific legal thing, and you can't really trademark the word folklore. That's not a thing. It's just a Twitter branding thing. It's not that big a deal.
Thank you for clarifying. That's good to know. I think a lot of people did think that it was trademarked and therefore was making her money when people used it or something like that, which I don't think is the case.
Yeah.
Still, I think if people had like a I don't know, inkling that Taylor Swift was going to drop an album called The Folklore and like has never like taken a like college level like humanities elective folklore class, I really by the end of the album didn't think it was a problem, because I think she has like a definite idea of what she thinks folklore is, and I think it's like pretty damn close, and especially for like the like platform she has and like the reach that this album is going to get to, if this is what people's like idea of folklore is, like I'm fine with it. Yeah, you know, like it doesn't get into some of the you know, like some of the stuff I love about the field. Like it's never gotten into eating contests on this album. But I think if people come to the field of folklore with an idea from Taylor Swift folklore as like what folklore is, like it's a very good first step to me.
What I think is interesting about this one is when we get into that idea of what constitutes the field of folklore, is that I think it's pretty easy to get hung up on kind of fairy tales, folk tales, and ballads, and ignore the things like the eating contests, and ignore things like material culture, which are all aspects of folklore and folklore studies. And so this one, for me, I do actually kind of love the metaphor of the sweater thrown under the bed, because there is something about, hey, here's this important material thing that's been handmade that does hold a lot of meaning and has a lot of fit. And very often those are things that kind of get discarded because they are everyday objects.
I also think that a lot of folklorists feel that way about the field of folklore.
Yes.
They feel as though it is not, it has been tossed aside by humanities at large.
And there's a lot of people who trip into it, who accidentally end up in folklore studies, and then they forget to check that there are experts in the field who might know a little something. But yeah, there's something I like this one because this is the one that's the most material culture-y, that does actually talk about the value of everyday objects and the meaning we assign to them. That cardigans and these kinds of things, they're status symbols and they're value holders in the same way that high heels and vintage t-shirts are, but they just occupy a different space. They're much more based on your everyday life, your sense of self and sense of home and sense of comfort, and kind of constitute that kind of very deeply personal relationship that you don't always understand when you spend so much, if you are spending so much time trying to live that black lipstick life. Lord knows I do.
I think if people like stumble into the field accidentally, Taylor Swift's about the highest profile person to ever stumble into the field of folklore, and me from 10 years ago would never believe I'm saying it, but I welcome her, and I wish I was teaching her her arts and humanities elective in folklore. I think she seems like a pretty good student, and she's here to learn or do the thing I like most about being a folklorist. I think she's here on this album, like with this her understanding of folklore to contextualize the everyday experiences of her life as a sort of grander like thing that gets it's part of this like legacy that gets passed down. So hi Taylor, glad you're here. Know you're watching.
In like the initial crush of Folklore Thursday, and all of the memes and tweets and discussions that were thrown around, all I could think was, this is an autoethnography album. Like,
see,
I even listen to it.
See, really I don't think so. I disagree. I think this is less an autoethnography compared to some of her other albums that were painfully confessional or like, to me, felt self-centered in a way that I didn't personally like, because I don't really care for her as a celebrity. I think she's cool. I love this album, actually. But she never really... She was my favorite, let's say.
Is our next song "Last Great American Dynasty"?
That is our next song, and I'm ready.
Anna, that leads exactly into what I'm about to say about "Last Great American Dynasty."
All right.
Well, so I want to clarify. My think of her as autoethnography was before I heard the album, because I do agree with you, Anna. There are other albums and other songs that are much closer to that, but I did kind of get to this point of like, oh. Yeah, actually, we could start thinking about this as personal narrative and as autoethnography, and that's actually a really interesting way. Like, if you were teaching 101 in the fall, and you needed a unit on personal narrative and autoethnography or anything like that, because, I mean, we're all virtual, there's nothing wrong with like going to the singer-songwriters and seeing how that manifests as personal narrative. There's something really interesting about that idea with Taylor. Anyway.
So I live at the beach, and first off, 50 years of a property that has been left alone, that house is going to be significantly damaged, so I am sorry, Miss Swift.
All right, I'm going to play in my headphones again, Last Great American Dynasty. Well, I know Dom has particularly a lot of feelings about this song, so take it away.
Taylor Swift will go down in history as an artist who represents a Foucauldian episteme in popular music. For most of history, artists and art were never giving one same message. For example, we knew that Van Gogh was neurodivergent, but analysis of his art never was only about his psychoses. Taylor Swift came around at an incredible intersection of social media, tabloid media, and the accessibility of popular music, especially track by track. Whereas the dominant narrative around how to read Taylor Swift's music directly became a sort of autobiography, or, as we were saying earlier, an autoethnography. For example, like, name a guy Taylor Swift dated. Anyone, name a guy Taylor Swift dated.
Tom Hiddleston.
Jonas. Wasn't there a Jonas guy?
All right, now
one of the Jonas Brothers.
Now name a song.
And then Harry Styles and
Harry Styles. So, like, what's a song about Harry Styles? Like, we are never ever getting back together. Is about Harry Styles, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no, that's Jake Gyllenhaal. Harry Styles is Style, but she has a song called Style. Can't believe I dropped the ball on that one. She has a song called Style that is so obviously about Harry Styles. She's got Jake Gyllenhaal tracks. She's got a song called Dear John, which
John Mayer.
Just be called Mayer. Listen the hell up. Anyway, so it's this intersection of social media, which we're like moving from the like 2000s notion of like the blog, like the big formal update, to the social media sort of micro blog where you get like little, like easily digestible updates on someone's life, and it's like a more precious commodity when it's a celebrity doing it. Taylor Swift is always posting. Between always posting and always writing songs in like the second person, talking about you can piece that together and sort of put together Taylor Swift's autobiography. And that went on to not only define her, but I think kind of define the 2010s in popular music. Ariana Grande just like has a song where she goes, "It's time for me to do my Taylor Swift thing. I'm just going to list all of the boys I dated." Even Beyonce wrote an album about what it feels like to be the most important Black woman in America. And I feel like most people listening to it go, which ones are about Jay-Z? You know what I mean? So it kind of like was this cultural shift into sort of the songwriter as like sort of autoethnographer. Reputation, the Taylor Swift album, really doubles down on this. I can't think of another word other than reputation. Lover as well. She's encouraging you to understand her public life in order to understand her art. So like, look what you made me do. You kind of have to do your homework about what's going on in her public life to understand that song on the radio. You could just dance to it because it's got, you know, like immaculately produced synth music. But if you want to get the lyrics, you want to get why like the old Taylor is dead, you have to understand her public life. You Need to Calm Down in the video has her and Katy Perry dressed like French fries and hamburgers hugging. You need to understand the context of her public feuds to understand what the hell is going on in the video. And that's what blew my mind when I started listening to the last great American Dynasty. Third person. This is a song about Rebecca, the wife and heir to the wife of the heir of the Standard Oil fortune. By Jove, I thought perhaps Taylor Swift's idea of folklore is this kind of third person ballad, collecting the stories of the everyday lives of people who don't appear in more normative histories. And that's how I interpreted the last great American Dynasty until Taylor said it was bought by me. And I realized Taylor had been telling the story of Rebecca so that she could connect it through the house into her own life, into like her own autoethnography. She was really doing that thing you do like at the beginning of an ethnographic study where you give everyone a sense of place. She was going deep dive into the place. I think that's like the real brilliance of why that's my favorite Taylor Swift song on the album, and probably like Taylor Swift song ever at this point. Taylor connects her life and Rebecca's through the sense of place in the house. They are both these nouveau riche mad women blowing through money and making the beach terrible in the eyes of their neighbors. There are some criticisms of women that are these timeless stories that connect across generations and contexts with a few formulaic differences. Oh, perhaps that could be her definition of folklore.
Can I just say, I do not buy Taylor as a mad woman or as a bad girl blowing through money as like an eccentric, like wealthy older woman. She is not that now, and I don't know that I ever see her really.
I don't think she thinks she is, but like again, if you like know about her, like I don't know, crazy Rhode Island beach parties, like all of her neighbors think she is some sort of new money mad woman, and she's totally playing into that in order to like do the connection between her and Rebecca on this song.
But I do think it's important. An important difference here is that Rebecca marries into the fortune.
Yes.
Taylor has her own fortune.
She built it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is some full on Real Housewives class warfare right there. But yeah, no, I very much get the like Taylor as nouveau riche, because she's not from the coast. She's from
the mountains.
She's an Appalachian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to. God, I can't wait for Taylor Swift's Brian Eno album.
Should we pull it? Should we do the oblique strategies?
Yes. I'm really loving the idea of Brian Eno showing up like, it's time.
Old sourpuss himself.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Like I want her to do an ambient album next.
I just love the idea, like a super producer would be like, your time has come. It's time for you to make an album with me.
Evil Beanie.
I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
Just flashed in my head.
Oh my god.
This Taylor Swift has a song called I Am a Fuck.
Yeah.
I
Anyway.
want to go back
That's a song. That's an album I'll sip wine to when I'm 40.
Oh, it's so close to me. Dom, I really liked your. I get really hung up in your the idea that Beyonce has a Taylor Swift album.
No, I think Beyonce has a Beyonce album, and Taylor Swift broke everyone's brain that album gets analyzed in the lens of Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
yes.
But it's so interesting because they have such a critical moment in both of their careers together. And it happened several years earlier.
Oh, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The Kanye moment, like we all talk about the Kanye moment as being the Kanye moment, but it's a Beyonce moment.
He was trying to make it about Beyonce, but he made it.
It was defending single ladies.
He was defending. Valid. Single ladies deserve
and
defending.
I think it's got to do with the MTV like VMAs is like nonsensical names of their categories that like I think Kanye thought she was ineligible for winning Video of the Year if she lost Best Female Video.
Honestly,
and so that's why he had to roll up and be like, no, I still want her to win Video of the Year. That's my take on what Kanye meant in his like alcohol-addled brain that night.
Honestly, like Single Ladies is a better video.
It won Video of the Year. And it won Video of the Year.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot there about just like the VMAs are such a nonsense thing in a lot of ways, but I think that's such an interesting moment because you had Beyonce was on this extreme trajectory. Mm-hmm. Like, she's only been going from strength to strength since going solo from Destiny's Child, and Single Ladies was such a seminal video for that. But then Kanye interrupts that flow with this aggressive attack in a lot of ways. Refocusing that moment onto Beyonce forced the limelight onto Taylor Swift in a way that is still playing out.
Yeah, actively.
The Kardashian Wests are still playing out that drama, and it's been years. And they still go back to that drama needlessly, really. And I've always been really angry because it put Beyonce in a really uncomfortable position where she had to be gracious.
Yeah.
And
I think though, okay, overall, a thing that I think she's maybe like, or that I am reading into this album, that she's trying to get away from that sort of reading of her as the image that she's presenting through songs, and that she's sort of trying to divorce a little bit from her songs being explicitly autobiographical. And I think I see that in particular with Mirrorball. And she's talking about how she is reflecting back, right? Sort of the projection of everybody else. She's the thing that they're all looking at. But oh wait, you have to listen to this first.
I was gonna say, keep talking. I'm gonna press play and listen to this while you're just keep going.
Go for it. Yeah. So I feel like she's sort of in naming this folklore. I think she associates folklore a lot with storytelling, and she's sort of saying that she is a storyteller with this album a little bit more, and taking on different point of view in a few of the songs explicitly, but that she is still basically just that she's like reminding listeners that she is not necessarily what she is projecting in the public sphere. Like, she is a brand. She has many people working for what Taylor Swift is, you know? She is a person also, but I think she's maybe realizing that she doesn't need her person to be the main appeal. She's a songwriter. I mean, she's a writer, you know? And I think that that's important. And so in Mirrorball, which I think is great, that's the first song that I really was like, oh, this song, I'm getting it.
And the idea of like her reflecting back and showing you who you are, a million different pieces in her shattered edges, that's kind of cool. because when you're in a relationship, you definitely can see different parts of who you are as you engage in this relationship with your person, whether it's a family member, friend, lover, what have you. I guess you could call each of us maybe our own little a mirror ball to our own partners, perhaps. Depending on your mood, depending on their mood, you can see different parts of each other.
As I'm listening to it, like I'm feeling that way too. Of like I'm not. The songs are the other ones I listen to are good, but this is when I'm like, oh, like her voice and the way that the intonation is, it sounds like the light speckling from a Mirrorball. I don't know. I'm getting the vibe of that
It's
kind of like
swirly,
lightness
too.
and like, yeah, like I can see that.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think so, like, so she's like, the whole song is about how she's reflecting, she's trying to get people to look at her, she's trying as hard as she can to draw attention, which I think has to do with the sort of like gendered gaze that she like is under at all times,
spinning on her highest heels,
right?
That's
And
what she says,
yeah, and so like she's trying to get attention, and that's her job as a performer also, to sort of be that, but she's not necessarily comfortable with that. And I think an interesting aspect of the mirror ball is that it's sort of hollow, right? Which is interesting. I don't know that she's trying to say that, but I do think maybe that the star icon is not necessarily like her. So that's sort of what I was getting out of it. But I also wanted to point out as a folklorist that there are several sort of iconic definitions of folklore or culture that have mirror or reflection as part of them. So there's like folklore is a mirror to society is something that Dundee said. And I think Boaz said something early on about culture being a reflection. And she says explicitly, I'll show you every version of yourself tonight, and is sort of talking about that as an important thing. So I kind of was interested in the idea of her seeing herself as an icon and explaining that to the world. That's a pretty interesting thing to me. What do you guys think about it?
There's this like interesting like circus element to it as well. I mean, she talks about masquerade, which is like, I guess maybe not super circusy, but she's on the tightrope and the trapeze. Everybody's looking at me, and as particularly like a trapeze and a tightrope, like those are such thin lines to walk. It's almost like any wrong move, and she's shattered. And she already says that there's cracks. I'm wondering if that speaks to some of the drama that we were talking about earlier.
Sure, yeah, like I could definitely see that.
But then it's also like she's speaking to an individual, maybe, or to a hypothetical group or something. I'll show you every version of yourself tonight. Like I'm not sure if she's talking to herself because it's a mirror. Is that what this is? Maybe.
There's the song "I'll Be Your Mirror," which is by the Velvet Underground.
I love that song so much.
Which is really good. So to me,
song.
when I first heard this song, I actually thought about it as an experience that I've had as, I think, maybe a woman or maybe somebody who is like in a relationship with somebody, that you are trying to reflect somebody back to them, and that's sort of your role. Rather than being your own individual. And I think that there are very much a lot of gendered sort of like allusions she's making.
And I think she would agree with you. I was looking for this quote where she said she was talking in that documentary about her Miss Americana. She was talking about what it's like to be a woman songwriter, and she says constantly having to reinvent yourself, constantly finding for new facets of yourself that people find to be shiny.
Yeah, wow, that's totally.
Another interesting part, just to pick apart some of the lyrics I'm looking at too. The line "drunk as they watch my shattered edges glisten" is like particularly painful. And she ends at that's in the second verse, and actually in the first verse she has a similar ending, which is and when I break it's in a million pieces. So again, like it's actually kind of I think it's a sad line.
Yeah, no, this is a melancholy song that's about being alone in the middle of a dance floor. And
everybody's looking at you and you don't know how to perform for the audience.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to My Tears Ricochet, and we'll see with that one.
Sounds like an X-Man power. My name is Ricochet. Watch my tears.
One of the things that I really thought interesting about this song is the visual representations of death that she is just hammering home. Entire song. And I find it interesting partially because like death is one of these things that like we don't speak of, but we'll make allusions to it. So we're fine with openly like using symbols of death, but maybe not as open about actually speaking of death and the different types of death that exist, including ends of relationships of various sorts. And what I find interesting is throughout this album, she's like slowly inputting like there's a ghost that's haunting her in some way. And this kind of like speaks to, I don't know if you guys saw that meme that was floating around for a while about tradition being peer pressure from dead people.
I did not like that. I like had to have a moment being like, listen, if it's a tradition, it means it's alive now.
Yeah, it's not always dead people. I always just tell my students, what like, memes did your grandpa teach you?
Like the dead are alive in the ways that like we carry them with us past like the actual ends of their lives or like the ends of our relationships with them. And people don't think about that. So maybe in a way, like tradition is peer pressure from dead people, but she is just hammering home these like visual representations of like death in this song. And prior to this, she was only like making like allusions to being haunted. Like in Cardigan, the only like olfactory sense that she inputs into that song is like smoke lingering. And she's referencing that to a person. This is about somebody that's tormented her, showing, or maybe not her, but like it's somebody that's tormenting, that tormented someone throughout their lives and showing up at the funeral of his fallen object of obsession. And I think that it really hammers home this idea of trauma as well that she's introduced into this album, because there's like this underlying thread of trauma.
Yeah, I want to hear more about the trauma thing because I hadn't thought about that, but I feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like trauma is one of those things that, like death, we don't like to talk about. It lingers, it's ghostly, it haunts us, it pops up at like the randomness moments. In this, she's like talking about like, if I'm dead to you, why are you at the wake? You're cursing my name, wishing I stayed, and like, look at how my tears ricochet. And she's just like making these very like blatant like confrontations as being like, in this song, she's the dead person. And she's the ghost that's watching like the people react to like her emotional or like some form of death that's happened that's associated with the trauma.
I'm thinking about the idea of like something ricocheting off of another thing. Like if she's the ghost and people are crying for her while she's crying, there's something like magical about the power of sending the tears to somebody, or like, does that make any sense? Am I going somewhere that's not?
Look, if you want to get into tears and fairy tales, we can.
Well, and she talks about another line that I thought was kind of interesting is she says, "You hear my stolen lullabies." Like the idea that you can steal a lullaby is like not like does not compute entirely to me. Like
the line is like, when you can't sleep at night, you hear my stolen lullabies. What does that sound like to you guys?
screaming.
Sad.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Scooter Braun.
Like
yeah.
Scooter Braun, it's Scooter.
Like, he's like referencing like an omen happening, because there's certain figures within folklore, like say banshees that scream
Yes.
about deaths that are happening, and maybe she, like, for me, I find those figures interesting because, like, while I'm not an expert at fairy lore, banshees are these beings that are essentially like traumatic in a way. They're ghostly. They're considered a death
harbingers
omen.
of trauma. They're the family record of trauma, because they're there to record deaths in the family and to announce death. And now I just want Scooter Braun to be haunted by a banshee for the rest of his life.
I think that's the idea.
This whole song is all sympathetic magic, basically. It is. No, it literally is. It's like, where is it? I'm on fire. You'll be made of ashes too. The idea of tears ricocheting is kind of that. Where was the other one?
And there's
you were wearing the same.
You'll miss me in my bones. Miss me in your bones.
We're wearing the same jewelry. Like, there's all these connections of we are the same.
Can I
the
just?
Song
I
is
have
sympathetic magic.
I have a fan theory now that this is about the woman in the last great American dynasty in her house. Also, you could definitely read it from that perspective.
Oh yeah.
But like the imagery that she is just like projecting in the song through like representations of death, like being at the wake, like screaming, cursing your name. For me, she's hammering home, like, I don't know. I'm just really excited about all the death stuff.
I do want to say, Anna, like, if you read it as being the perspective of Rebecca and her house, you buy a house, you buy the ghosts.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like she's like identifying with that woman, right? Also,
she absolutely identifies with that woman. But that's the rule for old houses. You buy the house, you buy the ghosts. That's the deal. So you either live with the ghosts or you don't. Who doesn't like hauntings?
Holding on to her, she's like haunting her back catalog.
She absolutely is haunting her back catalog, though. And I think this is a theme I think we're gonna return to again and again, is like the placement of women in the creative field, the perception of women in music especially, but also kind of acknowledging this is a woman with a 15-year career who has 8 studio albums and a lot of really high-level controversies that are still playing out.
That makes me think like let's return again to this idea of like, what do we think Taylor Swift thinks is folklore? Because part of me now is like, okay, so there's like this element of tradition and sharing that we've kind of talked about, or at least like maintaining, I don't know, past practices or storytelling and sharing. And then now I'm like, it's personal narrative.
I think that's a good segue to 7 too. Because
I was going to suggest that's the next one that we listen to.
Something that I've seen tossed around a couple of places and I find really interesting is Taylor has not been compared to by the critics or in any reading as the Carole King, Kate Bush, Joni Mitchell vibe. She's not being compared to other women. She is being compared to Bruce Springsteen. Which is, yes, isn't it though? Because there's this very weird sense of pushing Taylor into the vibe of being kind of the torchbearer of Americana.
Yeah.
Miss Americana. Miss Americana.
She is a Miss Americana. And not Lana. Ooh, let's fight over Americana vibes.
I would love to see Taylor's next album start off with like, oh, they closed down the Depression Factory.
Oh my god.
Oh, she gets so close though. But there's I think that's really fascinating, the idea that she's being that's the comparison people are going to is Bruce.
I think that makes sense though, because like Bruce is not about the sort of glam of Americana, which I think Lana Del Rey is about, like the dark, seedy, glamorous underbelly sort of like gross parts. And I feel like Taylor Swift is kind of more about like the approachable, like the kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about Taylor in terms of how does she fit in this legacy of King and Mitchell and Kate Bush to a degree, because if you want spooky witchy vibes, your choices are Stevie Nicks and Kate Bush, and a little bit Annie Lennox.
Oh, what about Heart?
I'm thinking of solo acts.
Oh, okay, solo acts. Yes.
Like in terms of solo acts, and we're talking Stevie post Fleetwood, and eventually we'll have to start giving things ratings of how many rumors does an album have. Like in the terms of like solo female artists, we've got these great singer-songwriters, and there's a ton of American ones, and do we talk about Carly and do we talk about Carol, and we talk about them, and then you've got the spooky fairy vibes, because Taylor absolutely went from fairy tale to that one where she's lost in a maze, and then Cardigan. Like she's very much going from this like, oh, I thought I liked fairy tales, and then I actually read some of them, and they are dark and scary.
All right, we're back from a short break there, and we decided to do a quick minute on a couple different songs. So first, we're going to give our hot takes on Madwoman, then Epiphany, and then Betty, because we're going very long on this stream, and I think we all have some good takes on these three songs, and then we will end with 7, and it'll be great. Okay, so what do we think of Madwoman? I'm going to listen to it right now. Look up the lyrics.
Madwoman is, we were waiting. Taylor Swift is taking the Folklore 101 class and like writing an album about it, like we said earlier. And I'm glad she finally got to her like witch trials day. Because I think the
is this when she joins Coven?
She has been in. I think she's been in a Coven this whole time.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and
the video right now, they're only doing lyric videos for like this entire album except for Cardigan, and this one, the background image is just flames.
Now I breathe flames.
Ooh. I think she's kind of found, and she's also found like a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like intersectional take on witch hunts. It's like she's writing her witch hunt folklore 101 essay, where she's saying like women like hunting witches too. You know what I mean? She's making like a broader critique of the sort of societal forces that like push back against women's agency that we saw like reflected in like that era of like burning women who won't weren't confirmed to like early modernity, and calling them a like evil magic.
Yeah. Do you think that this has any connection to like the current political climate, i.e. nasty woman, i.e. witch hunt talk? Or am I reading into like too politically? Is this bigger than that?
I think she's referencing that.
Like the masters, and so like she has to be like talking about like how all of these issues are being spun in ways that were mad women, but
seriously, some violent themes in this for Taylor Swift. Noose and madness and other forms of violence. All right. Little edgy.
We have reasons to be so.
Yeah.
The outro is no one likes a mad woman. What a shame she went mad. You made her like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is like an intro to gender studies class.
Yeah, this one is definitely like I feel like has like a clear message. Something that I was a little bit interested in is like the use of mad, like as anger versus as like not sane.
Yeah.
Are we talking like Faith from Buffy the Vampire Slayer mad, or are we talking madness as in like a form of like psychosis?
Interesting. Yeah.
And the sort of like the way that that's conflated in this song in particular.
That's cool. I like it.
I'm not going to say any more on that.
Yeah.
Daisy, what's the next song?
Next song is Epiphany.
Cool.
Epiphany.
Epiphany, have strong feelings about. I actually like this as the most as the two out of like the two super like deathy songs. Partially because she's actually referencing like things that you experience that are sometimes like just things you can't speak about when you're going through the processes of like trauma and like death. It's like it works in waves, and you're just like waiting for like that one moment of relief, which for her she describes as epiphany. It's like only 20 minutes to sleep, but you dream of some epiphany, just one glimpse of relief to make the sense of what you've seen. And while she states that she's like referencing this to like some of her grandfather's military experience, it can definitely be expanded upon to more traumatic, like more experiences of trauma and death. Regarding things that we can't speak about. And I feel like it really helps lay down groundwork, like, for all these other things that she's talking about in her album.
So is it a war song? Is this PTSD from war?
She's talking about, like, issues with war. She's talking about the med school stuff. And one of the things that has been critiqued with our current healthcare system is that we don't know, like they don't know how to convey trauma with empathy, and those are things that they're not taught to speak about. Well,
reading the lyrics and not listening to the chorus, it's like she's describing a panic attack in some ways. Like it's all just like, yes. I watch you breathe in and out, breathing in and out, and then like with you I serve, with you I fall down, like maybe somebody caring for somebody with I don't know. There's just this it's very like
so
an emphasis on like the here and now and the thing that is happening in this moment, which is this exchange of breath and noticing the breath. I'm getting all like, meditation like here now, but I'm not sure that's I don't think she's trying to make a point about meditation, but
it's a more meditative song.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's talking about being in the moment of like what you're experiencing.
Again, I think the strongest part of the album is the instrumentals. Very slow song, very contemplative movie end credits. Epiphany was not an epiphany for me. It sounded sweet. It's trying to wrestle with strong themes of death, violence, and medical care.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Good take. Let's do Betty.
Betty.
This song's really gay. This song is so gay.
This one is a very good example of everyone reading into all of her lyrics.
I don't know what to like. Okay,
and I think she's playing with that. She's playing with that.
She is because she's like making two of the characters just like coincidentally named after Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's kids. Oh yeah.
Riverdale.
It's
okay, yeah.
I know. So I
haven't even listened to it. First lines, I'm like.
So I think what like she's saying like this is part of a trilogy on the album with like what Cardigan, with like Cardigan's part 1. This is like part 3, and like this is supposed to be like each member of a love triangle like singing about the other two. Okay, then that's like the illuminated brain, and then like the galactic brain is just like. This is a woman singing to a woman, and every woman I know who loves women is saying that, and it has definitely entered la discourse like that. So this is just like the I don't know, lesbian cottagecore anthem of 2020.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely
basically.
gonna enter the queer canon.
Yeah.
Of, like, in terms of its subtext, but also its explicit text. Like, if you were to not read into all of the other songs and this sort of like trilogy of stories or whatever, which I do think is pretty loose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're just reading like if you're just taking this song as its own text, there's like, I don't know, there's a girl singing to a girl and she's on a skateboard and she isn't like the other girls. Like, text, it's text.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
I mean, she does say though,
17.
James, get in, let's drive. Like, she's James, which maybe though, I mean, that's interesting.
it is, yeah, it is. I think what folklorists can do for popular culture is really talk about like when like a song that's made from like this, you know, like mass media, capitalistic, like sort of like it's a commodity, like it's art, but it's a commodity. And then I think what folklore does a good job of is really looking at like the life of its own that these sort of commodities take on. And I'm saying there is one specific life of its own that this song is already taking on. So
yeah, no, I think that this is like a good example though of how she's playing with the audience and storytelling,
and how the fan creator relationship happens too, where like she, like, maybe this one name James is really what she means it to be, but then to have this like interpretation of their fans that are like, finally she's writing about something for me as like a queer person who is experiencing this like playful love for the first time.
Yeah, which is to say, she had like you need to calm down, which is like an explicit like queer. It's like a queer anthem, but it's like explicitly like a Pride soundtrack song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is like she's using her like ballad powers for good, and she's writing something that like connects with people like on a personal level more so than just like like an anthem. You know, like more so than an anthem.
I don't have qualms against this yet. Like I said, it sounds more like her teardrops on her guitar kind of initial outings.
Yeah, no, this is introspective and cute. I mean, I think that also that it's important that I just was thinking about like her writing this during like COVID in particular, and sort of the fact that you are isolated from other people, and so you're kind of remembering your interactions and you're kind of like mulling over them, and it's kind of nostalgic.
I am very curious if she wrote this during COVID or just recorded it. Like, I would love to know when in her like timeline in connection to the pandemic when these were written and when they were recorded.
I know because I think some of them were written now.
I think so. I think so too. Like, or at least finalized. You know,
right,
edited to their final.
I read a little bit about the construction of it with the guy Aaron Dresner, and they did a lot of like he would send her something and then she would send him something back that was just like riffing on what he did, by voice. That's so cool. I do think a lot of it was constructed like that, but I don't know about all of it. So
cool.
Still no folklore, really. Thinking, what are we at? What are we expecting? I guess really, we're not expecting her to be like. And then there came Tolkien, and he said that we should all look at tradition this way. And Dundas said, psychoanalysis. Like, I don't know. And Richard Dorson went to the UP, and he found all kinds of interesting things. No, Dom, I will not do more. Nor for you, Caitlin, Kenny.
All right, I think that's good for our 3 song hot takes, and let's finish this off with 7.
7.
All right, we can have a longer discussion about this, and then I think what we think Taylor thinks folklore is.
This is a good song.
This song has this song has, I think, if you were like, all right, play me the song that has the one sentence of what Taylor thinks folklore is, it's this song.
All right.
Which is, where is it?
I like want to wait until you get to that point.
I'm like, okay,
hold
I'm in
on.
verse one. I'm in verse one.
What I mean, like, hey everyone, talk about cottagecore. Like, how do we feel about the aesthetic moment of cottagecore?
See, I didn't see this as cottagecore because I thought this was like a kind of like child's folklore thing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's definitely both, but I mean, like,
cottagecore is the whole vibe of this album, though.
Yeah, the way it connects, I think, to Taylor, especially on this song, is like rural Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Like that's like her Venn diagram for cottagecore and children's folklore is both rural PA. So I think that's where I'm getting that. Mm-hmm. Now, picture me in the trees, like that is like a kid on like a kid on like a rope swing, and it's also like two bohemian girls settling down in the country together, you know.
Mm-hmm. So are you referring to the passed down like folk songs "The Love Lasts So Long"?
Yeah,
yes. I love that.
It's good.
I was like not even just the folk song, but like the love lasting really long, because that's kind of a folklore is like a love song to your community.
Yeah,
it's how you express love to each other. I'm gonna cry, you guys.
Okay. You didn't know you'd cry in this. I cried to like 5 of these songs.
Oh
actually.
My god!
Like,
I think if I were listening, without the distraction of all of you all, I think I would probably feel a little bit more like emotional.
This is the song.
Really
this is
though.
The song where like both like kind of running plots that I had in my head on this album like both converged, which was Taylor Swift's term paper about what is folklore, and also Taylor Swift's treatises about like rural queer life, because you won't have to cry or hide in the closet.
I get where she's coming from with that line. I get it. And I mean, how many people today look at folk songs as love, right? They look at it as something old, something Appalachian, or Irish. It's more of a heritage object, right? It's more of a heritage practice, something that is kept alive. As Christian Black Gimlet would say, heritage gives the past a second life. So is this love therefore dead, right? If the past if it gives a second life, that means something is dead and it brings it back. Or is it a love that's being kept alive, right? Being active. It has to renew itself. It has to be given purpose.
I think this song, looking, like at the lyrics in addition to listening it, has the most types of folklore mentioned to me anyway.
Explicitly.
Right. Like cross your heart, hide in the closet, folk songs, moon and Saturn,
your house
raids, sweet tea, like almost everything is.
Yeah.
Well, like I think it's interesting how she's attaching it to children's folklore in that song. Because like a lot of this is stuff that you do as like kids. Like there's even like tradition of like making believe, like being pirates.
Yeah.
It's interesting how she's attaching like these concepts of time and space within this song to like her childhood.
Yeah.
Growing maybe as like a storyteller. One of the last like lines in the chorus is talking about like packing your dolls in a sweater and like moving on, but like still being passed down like folk songs.
Well, it's interesting. She also she says explicitly, "We'll move to India forever," right?
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure what to make of that, other than
that one seemed weirdly specific.
It's like really specific. Well, yeah,
I put that together with like the Pirates line. I think that's like one of the places American kids see is the other side of the world, and if you play pretend,
because so much of the other references I saw is like pretty deeply American,
and the kind of Orientalist like
I was like, this is
of the pirate, and then like also like
I was thinking like this is. Only exotic places have folklore.
Right.
We don't have folklore.
Oh,
the other people have folklore. I don't think she's trying to make that point. That's just where my head went, like thinking about other people have folklore, but not us. But I don't think that she's trying to make that argument.
Yeah, no. I think she's also explicitly making the argument that she had folklore when she was a kid on her tree farm in Pennsylvania where she grew up.
Yes, across the creek, swinging from the trees. Yeah. I was getting a oh my god, why can't I think of what it's called? The like super tragic story we all read in like middle school where the two friends are make believe and
Bridge to
the bridge.
Terabithia.
Thank you. I was like, there's a bridge involved. I was literally thinking the bridge to Terabithia.
Is that a cottagecore book?
Bridge to Terabithia is kind of like magical realist cottagecore.
Oh, but so much more sad.
Cottagecore is pretty sad because it's like the fundamental pinning is that you're trying to like recreate something that
That's
you can't.
true.
Yeah, escape to something that like you remember that you like are only going to like build a like.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's great point. To me, I liked one of the things about Seven that I liked was that it kind of helped me contextualize the sort of like pop aspects of this album. I don't listen to that much pop music. I like pop music though. I feel like I have very snotty tastes in like some aspects, but I also have very lowbrow tastes in others. But particularly I liked that in this song she's incorporating various sayings and phrases like that are sort of reminiscent. Yeah, and she does that, I feel like, in some of her songs too. I'm like, oh, this one sounds exactly like that song from the 90s. There are several songs that have like the same melody from like big songs that I know she must have heard, that I kind of was like, couldn't really put my finger on, but I kind of was thinking about how in this song, those sayings that are associated with childhood for the most part, like cross your heart, hope to die, kind of those things help convey the mood and set the tone in a very special way that other language would not. And I thought that was really beautiful. I also, in general, like sort of the amount of like different folklore references that are part of like children's lore is kind of interesting. As like, I remember one of my professors once telling me that children are like great bearers of tradition because partly they are the largest group of non-literate people. Like they have to rely on kind of word of mouth and like memory specifically in order to reproduce these things a lot of the time. And I feel like she's kind of recognizing that braid's like a pattern, kind of like thinking about how she learned things at that time, which is interesting to me.
Well, I think that just about does it for our takes on Taylor Swift's folklore. What does she think folklore is in 2 sentences?
Pattern.
Pattern.
Okay, no, I take it back. I think she thinks it's storytelling, actually. She's kind of stuck on that, which is fine and a good part of it.
Transmitted.
And I think she
like really like the transmission and the interpretation. Because like that's what she's addressing throughout a lot of this album is like the interpretation of like her folklore.
I think like storytelling, but with a recognition that can be through objects or like experiences. Like you don't have to tell the story to make it a story, if that makes sense. I think she's picking up on that.
I think she gets that folklore is very attached to identity. This album is kind of like going through the processes of like memorialization of some sort for her.
This album should have been called Textiles. Yeah, this album should have been called Textiles.
Dom, what would you give her on her term paper?
Let's see. I think if I'm thinking she says folklore is like things you love that are passed down, and I'd probably give her like a 93, like a high A minus. I think she misses some of the nuance, but she does a good job of bringing in a lot of examples to prove her point.
I think, especially looking at the album as a whole rather than like individual songs. Like, I think that this song is like, or 7 is the concluding paragraph of the paper. I don't think it's not the last song, which is kind of interesting. It's somewhere in the middle. I think Hoaxer is maybe the last song.
But I mean, Betty's near the end too.
Betty's also near. Okay. Which is, I like to read into the idea that there's an intention in song order, but
I think there is, in terms of like you can listen to this one and it ebbs and flows nicely, which I think is also special about this time. Like, people are going to listen to this as an album more so than just hearing it on the radio, like at stores while they're working or whatever. You know, there's a little bit more.
I don't know if other people do that to all of her albums, but it seems like this one there's a lot more of a push to look at it like as this holistic story, where others maybe that's not the case. I don't know. Taylor Swift
really
fans
know.
don't come at me, Taylor Swift fans. I don't know.
But Caitlin, I thought that you had a really great point about how folklore is attached to identity, because that synthesizes the sort of like storytelling from a different point of view plus her own point of view that like I was trying to wrap my brain around. But yeah, that's great.
Yeah, any final thoughts about Taylor Swift and folklore, or any thoughts about folklorists and the album Folklore?
If a student comes up to me and says, folklore, oh, like Taylor Swift's album, that's a great segue. That's a great introduction to it. They will have heard the name folklore. That's not something we should just, like I said, shake it off. It's something we can utilize, right? Let's draw upon this and use it as an avenue for engagement.
I want to hear what other folklorists think. So
please, yes, please. If you have thoughts, comment. If you have questions, comment. Send us messages if you know us. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. We're going to be doing more videos like this in the future, and of all kinds of different content and mediums. So this isn't going to be the only edited live stream, or live stream if you're watching the whole thing. Look forward to more hot folklore takes in the future. Thanks for watching us.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey Folkwise fam, Daisy here. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. If you liked what you saw, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and if you really, really liked it, hit the little bell for notifications for future videos. By the way, did you know that at the Luxor Temple, there's a piece of 3,500-year-old graffiti that reads, "I visited and all I liked was the sarcophagus"? Thanks so much for watching. Catch you next time.
Okay, so we are on to hoax. Hoax. Yeah, I can hear my accent. That hoax. Oh, that's a hoax right there.